I was sitting on my porch that morning, minding my own business, sipping a cold beer like any retired construction guy with half a working spine would do, when suddenly, two police officers came marching up my driveway like they'd just gotten a call about a hostage situation. Flashlights up, hands on their belts, serious faces, like they practiced in the mirror. One of them yelled, "Sir, step away from the property. You're trespassing on HOA land." I blinked twice, looked down at my boots, which were currently resting on the porch I built. Then I looked back up at them and said, "Well, hell, boys. If this ain't my property, then who the hell's been paying the mortgage?" Before they could figure out how stupid they sounded, Karen, the HOA president, came power walking out from behind them like a raccoon wearing expensive yoga pants. Her finger stabbed the air like she was pointing out a rat. "Arrest him! He doesn't own this land anymore." I didn't know whether to laugh, choke, or ask if she'd accidentally snorted fertilizer. But something hit me right then, a quiet, cold realization that settled in the center of my chest. They weren't enforcing rules. They weren't protecting property. They were trying to take my life, 1 inch of land at a time. So I stood up slow, wiped the dust off my jeans, and stared right at the badge of the cop closest to me. No yelling, no drama, just one sentence. "You boys are about to learn you picked the wrong man's porch to stand on." That moment, right there, that's where this whole damn mess really started. And if you've got a minute, I'll tell you exactly how. A simple porch, a trail to the lake, and one red metal sign turned my quiet life into the most ridiculous fight I've had since my divorce. After the officers backed off that morning, more confused than victorious, I sat back down on my porch swing and just stared at the land stretching in front of me. A little breeze rolled through, carrying the smell of pine and lake water, the way it always did. That breeze was the whole reason I bought this place in the first damn place. See, after 54 years on this planet, I was tired. Not the need a nap tired. The seen too much, done too much, lost too much tired. My marriage had collapsed 3 years earlier. Clean on paper, ugly in real life. The kind of divorce where you walk out with half your savings and a whole lot of silence inside your chest. My 2 boys, grown, living in different states, busy living their own lives, which is exactly what I raised them to do. But that leaves a man with a lot of empty evenings. And after nearly 3 decades working construction, real construction, not the shiny clipboard kind, you don't retire with much except scars, a bad knee, and a set of calluses that stay with you, even when every contract and foreman doesn't. So, when I first found this land, 4 acres tucked behind a line of old oaks, the kind that creak in the wind but still stand proud, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Quiet. Not the quiet of loneliness, the quiet of peace. There was a narrow stream running along the south side. I could follow the curve of the water, with my eyes all the way down, until it disappeared behind a cluster of maple trees. If the wind came from the right direction, I could smell the lake before I even saw it. And in the evenings, when I sat out here with a cold beer in hand, the sky would turn that golden color you only get in late summer, like the whole world was telling you to slow down a little. I built my house myself, didn't hire a crew, didn't rent a high-end contractor, just me, my tools, and whatever was left of the back muscles my job hadn't ruined. The porch was my favorite part. Wide, sturdy, with enough space for a hammock between 2 maples I'd grown attached to. I stained the wood 3 times that first month, not because I needed to, but because I wanted everything here to be mine. My hands in every nail, my sweat in every plank, and for a while, it was perfect. Neighbors from the independent homes nearby would wave if they drove by. Folks from town would stop to say the place looked good. I'd wake up with the sun pushing through the blinds, step outside barefoot onto the boards, and feel like I'd finally outrun the noise of the world. But peace is a funny thing. It doesn't disappear all at once. It erodes, slowly, quietly, like water eating away at a stone. And the first crack in my peace? A trail. Just a simple little dirt trail that cut across the back of my land and headed straight down toward the lake. I didn't think much of it. People walked it. Kids biked it. Dog owners used it for their morning strolls. I figured, what the hell? Summer's short, let them have the shortcut. I didn't mind, not at first. But as I sat on that porch swing after dealing with the police, thinking about what had just happened, I realized something I should have seen way earlier. The moment you let people treat your land like theirs, It's only a matter of time before somebody decides you don't belong on it anymore. And trust me, they were just getting started. That trail behind my land had always been busy, but summer made it louder. More feet, more bikes, more noise. And with it came something I didn't bargain for. Trash. First a soda can, then two. Then a whole handful of wrappers and plastic cups tossed like confetti across the brush line. I tried to excuse it. People forget things. Kids get careless. But the moment I found a used diaper half buried under one of my maples, all bets were off. I'd worked construction for 30 years. I've stepped in things most folks couldn't pronounce, but nothing prepares you for the insult of finding a stranger's baby diaper on your own soil. I grabbed gloves, cleaned it up, muttered to myself, and went back to my day. But trouble travels in packs. A couple afternoons later, I heard sharp laughter coming from the trail, the kind that tells you before you even see them that whatever's happening isn't good. When I got closer, I saw 3 teenage boys, maybe 16, maybe 17, hurling empty beer cans into my woods like they were pitching for the damn Yankees. I walked up slow, hands in my pockets, voice steady. "All right, boys, pick all that up. You're on private property." The tallest kid, shaggy blonde hair, expensive sneakers, didn't even bother hiding the can in his hand. He grinned like he owned the place. "Relax, old man. Everybody uses this trail." "Trail's on my land," I said. "And you're littering on it?" Another kid snorted. "Whatever, it's just trash." That's when I stepped a little closer, not threatening, but not backing down either. "And trash gets reported as vandalism when it's on private property. You want me to file the report with the sheriff now, or do you want to pick it up first?" They froze. Not scared, no. Kids like that don't get scared right away. They get offended. The blonde one narrowed his eyes. "You serious?" "Dead serious." His friend muttered under his breath, "Dude, chill. My mom will freak if she gets that call again." I caught that one word, again. Blonde boy turned toward me, lips twitching like he couldn't believe someone dared challenge him. "My mom runs the HOA, he said, dragging out each word like a badge. "So, we're allowed to be here." I let out a short breath, not a laugh, not a sigh, just the sound a man makes when he realizes exactly what kind of trouble he's dealing with. "No, son. You're allowed to be here only if I say you are." I pointed at the cans. "Pick them up." For a second, we stared at each other. Old stubbornness versus young arrogance. Finally, one of them bent down and picked up a can. The others followed, grumbling. They didn't apologize, didn't look at me, didn't act sorry. Good. I wasn't looking for sorry. As they walked off, blonde kid tossed one last line over his shoulder. "We'll see about this." And that right there, those 4 little words, felt like a storm cloud rolling in. By sunset, I'd swept the porch, cracked open a cold beer, and almost forgotten the whole thing. Until someone pounded on my door, hard, sharp, angry. I opened it and found her, Karen. Same ponytail as blonde boy, same sneer, same "I own the world" look in her eyes. And the first thing out of her mouth wasn't a question, it was an accusation. "Did you threaten my sons?" At that moment, everything clicked. The trash, the attitude, the entitlement. And I knew. Those boys weren't the problem, they were the preview. I stood there in the doorway, still holding my beer, and looked straight at the woman who had just accused me of threatening her kids. She had one foot on my welcome mat like she was claiming the damn land for Spain. Same ponytail as her blonde boy, same tight workout outfit that probably cost more than my monthly groceries. Same expression you see on people who think rules are for everyone except them. She jabbed a finger toward my chest before I could even open my mouth. "You stay away from my sons. Do you understand me?" I took a slow breath, counted to 3. Told myself I was too old to slam a door in someone's face. "Ma'am," I said calmly, "your boys were throwing trash all over my woods." "They told me you threatened to file charges," she snapped. "I told them I could," I corrected her. "Trespassing and littering on private land? That's the law." She scoffed, an exaggerated, dramatic sound like she was performing for an audience. "Private land," she repeated, full of disbelief. "This trail has been used by this community for 20 years. It's practically public access." I crossed my arms. "Practically," I said, "isn't legally." That line didn't just hit her, it offended her. Her eyes went sharp, like she'd just found the one loose thread on a sweater she planned to yank, until the whole thing unraveled. "Listen to me carefully," she said, lowering her voice to a threatening whisper. "My community has rights. People don't need your permission to walk where they've always walked." "On my deeded property?" I asked. "Yeah, they do." She stepped even closer, close enough that I could smell her overpriced perfume mixing with old sweat from whatever tennis match she'd probably screamed through earlier. "You think you can just move in here," she hissed, "throw around rules and bully teenagers?" That one earned a laugh from me, a short, tired, disappointed kind of laugh. "Lady," I said, "if reminding kids not to trash the woods qualifies as bullying, you've got bigger problems at home than me." Her lips tightened, her jaw clenched, and I swear, for a second, I thought she might try to slap me. Instead, she turned toward the trail, pointing dramatically like she was in some low-budget courtroom TV show. "This trail," she said, "belongs to Lakeview Estates, and you will not block access." "It's on my land," I repeated, slower this time. "That means I decide what happens on it." She shook her head, smirking like she knew some secret I didn't. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." Ah, there it was, the HOA war cry. Every HOA tyrant in America says that exact sentence at least once a week. It's right up there with "we sent you a notice" and "violation number 3. I leaned against the doorframe and took another sip of beer. "Ma'am, I'm too old for threats. Say what you came to say." She squared her shoulders. "If you ever address my children again, I will file harassment charges, and I will make sure the HOA deals with you." I raised an eyebrow. "Deals with me how?" She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Because she turned around, marched back down my driveway, and tossed one last line over her shoulder. "Enjoy your peace while you have it." I watched her disappear into the dusk, the tail end of her ponytail bouncing like it was angry too. And for a long moment, the night was still, quiet, almost normal. But inside my chest, something unsettled had begun to move. Karen didn't show up because of her sons. Her sons showed up because of Karen. And I was just beginning to understand the sort of storm I'd accidentally stepped into. After Karen's little performance on my doorstep, the evening settled back into its usual quiet. Crickets, a light breeze, the low hum of the woods. For a second, I even convinced myself maybe the whole thing was over. But peace doesn't end with fireworks. It ends with little things, tiny cracks, small signs. Things you only notice when you are paying attention. The first sign showed up the next morning. I walked out onto the porch with a hot cup of coffee, ready to start the day the way I always did. Slow, quiet, grateful. From where I stood, I could see the entrance to that trail through the trees. And right under my polite, homemade, private property, "Please don't litter" sign that sat a half-crushed beer can. Just one, placed almost perfectly centered beneath the sign. Not tossed, not dropped, not blown in by wind. Placed, like a dare or a message. I stared at it for a long moment, feeling something cold flicker in my gut. I picked it up, tossed it into my trash bin, and told myself not to jump to conclusions. Maybe some kid came through late, didn't think twice. Maybe it was coincidence. Except coincidence doesn't usually strike 2 days in a row. The next morning, there were 3 cans, lined up neatly, right in front of the sign, like someone had taken the time to arrange them. And on the third morning, wrappers. Plastic cups, cigarette butts, a smashed glass bottle, all of it scattered like confetti, but every single piece within a 3-foot circle around my sign. Not on the trail, not down the path, nowhere else. Just there, right in front of the only thing I had put up to set a boundary. I bent down, picking up one piece at a time, the way a man does when he's not angry yet, but knows he's going to be. As I cleaned, I noticed footprints, smaller ones, teenage-sized. Some with those expensive, dumb-looking soles the kids in that HOA wore, and one footprint, bigger, wider, adult-sized. I didn't want to assume, but I could picture Karen standing behind the trees, her arms crossed, barking orders like a general. I threw the trash away, washed my hands, and took a long look at the path stretching into the woods. My sign wasn't working, my patience wasn't working, my politeness sure as hell wasn't working. That's when I realized something important. This wasn't about the trail. It wasn't about lake access. It wasn't even about teenagers being idiots. It was about people who believed the world belonged to them simply because they said so. People who thought boundaries were just suggestions, that other folks' land was just an extension of theirs. People who'd never been told no without consequences. The kind who raise boys who brag about their mother running to the HOA. I stood there, trash bag in hand, and felt something shift in my chest. A slow anger, a deep anger, an anger that doesn't flare, it settles. Because I knew exactly what this was now. Not littering, a warning shot. So that evening, I didn't drink my beer on the porch. I went into the shed, grabbed a fresh metal sign, thicker this time, and a bag of concrete mix. If courtesy didn't work, authority would. If politeness didn't land, clarity would. If please don't got ignored, no trespassing, violators will be prosecuted, would do the talking instead. As the sun began to drop behind the trees, painting the woods gold and orange, I carried the new sign to the trailhead, like a man carrying the last piece of his patience. The air was cooling, the sun slipping behind the tree line, washing the woods in that warm orange glow that makes you wish trouble didn't exist. But trouble does exist, especially when it shares a zip code with an HOA. I set the sign in place first, big red letters, bold enough that even the blind could have read them. No trespassing violators will be prosecuted. No more please, no more polite, no more maybe they'll respect my property. I hammered the metal post into the dirt with a heavy driver, each hit echoing through the trees like a slow drum beat. Then I mixed the concrete in a bucket, thick and gray, and poured it around the base, packing it tight with a shovel to make sure no teenager or adult could yank it out without a truck and a tow strap. It was the kind of job I'd done 1,000 times in construction, but this time, it felt personal. By the time I finished, the sky had faded into purples and blues, crickets were starting their nightly choir, and I stood there looking at the sign, feeling something I hadn't felt in weeks: control. On my way back up the path, I ran into one of my neighbors, old Jim Walker. Lived 2 properties over, retired mechanic, the kind of guy who always wore the same beat-up cap that said "Farmers Feed America," even though he sold his tractor 10 years ago. He leaned over his fence, chewing sunflower seeds. "Heard you were doing some hammering back there," he said. "Just putting up a sign," I answered. Jim spat a seed shell into the dirt. "That's so," I nodded. "Had enough of people treating my place like a dump." He let out a slow whistle. "Son, you know who you're pissing off, right?" I raised an eyebrow. "Teenagers?" Jim shook his head. "No, their mother." "Which one?" "The one who runs the damn HOA. Karen, of course." Jim rubbed the back of his neck like he was deciding how honest to be. "Look, Ron, I ain't telling you what to do, but that woman, she don't like being told no, and she sure as hell don't like losing control." "Her control stops at her boundary line," I said. Jim snorted. "You think she cares where her boundary line is?" I didn't answer, because that line hit a little too close to the truth. Jim pushed off the fence, dusted off his jeans. "Just be ready. People like her don't back down. They double down." And with that warning hanging in the air like a storm cloud, he headed back to his shed. I walked the rest of the way to my house, the night settling heavy around me. I could still see the new sign at the edge of the woods, catching the last scraps of daylight, like a small silver shield. I felt proud of it. It was firm. It was clear. It was fair. And above all, it was mine. But even as I stood on my porch, the woods humming in the dark, I couldn't shake Jim's words. They don't back down. They double down. I didn't know it yet, but that sign, the one I'd poured concrete around, wouldn't last 48 hours. And the people who came for it, they weren't coming with politeness. They weren't coming with community spirit. They weren't even coming with shame. They were coming with a crowbar. And the smug confidence of people who believed that rules didn't apply to them, because they wore polo shirts with an HOA logo on the chest. The morning after I planted that new sign in concrete, the world felt almost normal again. Birds were chirping, the sun was coming up over the tree line, and the smell of coffee filled the kitchen. For a blissful few minutes, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, the message had gotten through. Then I opened my mailbox. Inside was an envelope so aggressively official-looking, it practically hissed at me. White, thick paper, HOA letterhead, sealed in navy blue ink like they were Congress drafting a bill. I stood there for a second, feeling my stomach tighten. Lakeview Estates, Homeowners Association, Enforcement and Compliance Division, Compliance Division. Lord help me. I tore it open. The letter inside was 3 pages long, printed front and back, written in that cold corporate tone HOA boards specialize in, the kind that sounds polite but feels like a slap. It started like this. Mr. Hunt, it has come to our attention that you have unlawfully blocked a community access path that has served Lakeview Estates residents for over 20 years. Your actions constitute grounds for violation penalties and legal review. I blinked at it. Blocked? A community path? On my land? I kept reading. Effective immediately, you are ordered to remove the unauthorized signage obstructing the trail. Failure to comply within 48 hours will result in a formal citation. Continued obstruction may lead to civil action on behalf of the community. Civil action on behalf of the community. It got better. Furthermore, you are reminded that harassment of minors is a serious offense. We expect your full cooperation in avoiding future incidents. I had to sit down for that one. I literally pulled up a lawn chair right beside the mailbox because my brain refused to process the level of stupidity written on that paper. Harassment of minors, for telling them to stop throwing beer cans onto my land. The 3rd page was the one that made my eye twitch. Our records indicate a historical easement exists in the area in question. Lakeview Estates has maintained uninterrupted use of this path for over 2 decades. As such, your attempt to impede access is unlawful. Historical easement, uninterrupted use, unlawful. I couldn't help it. I started laughing. Not a belly laugh. The kind of laugh a tired old man makes when he realizes he's reading something so far from reality it circles back around into comedy. If I'd had a nickel for every time a loud HOA claimed something was historically theirs, I could have bought the entire subdivision and shut it down myself. I folded the letter, walked back up to the house, and laid it on the kitchen counter like evidence in a crime scene. And that's when the phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. We saw the sign you put up. That's not allowed. Remove it before this gets worse. No name, no introduction, just entitlement wrapped in threat. I typed one sentence back. Identify yourself. No reply. I stood there, staring at the phone, the letter, and the woods behind my window. The message could have been from anyone, a board member, a neighbor, Karen herself, or some HOA wannabe hoping to score points. I set the phone down and exhaled slowly. This wasn't about the sign anymore. It wasn't about the trail. It wasn't even about those boys. This was a battle over control, their control, over land that wasn't theirs, over a man they thought that they could push around. And with every threat, every letter, every fake violation, I felt something inside me settle deeper and firmer than anger. Resolve. I looked out the window at the woods and whispered to myself, if they want to fight, they're about to see what a real one looks like. But I didn't know yet how bad it would get. I didn't know Karen had escalations of her own planned, and I sure as hell didn't know 2 police officers would be back at my door sooner than I thought. 2 days after the HOA letter showed up, I was on my porch tightening a loose hinge when I heard tires rolling slow over gravel. Not fast, not urgent, slow. The kind of slow where you know whoever's coming isn't lost. I wiped my hands on my jeans and looked up. A county cruiser pulled into my driveway, and my stomach dropped a little, not from fear, but from a feeling I've learned to trust over the years. This wasn't going to be friendly. 2 officers stepped out. The first one, a younger guy, maybe 30, looked nervous. Not scared, just uncomfortable, like he'd rather be anywhere else. The second one, Lord. Gray mustache. Permanent frown carved into his face like a warning sign. Hands on his belt like he'd been waiting his whole morning just to lecture someone. I'd met his type on job sites before. Men who didn't yell to be heard. They yelled because they enjoyed the echo. They walked up the porch together. The younger one cleared his throat. Mr. Hunt? That's me, I said. Unless someone else started drinking my coffee. He didn't laugh, didn't crack a smile. He just held up his notepad. We've had several complaints from the Lakeview Estates HOA about a trail you've blocked. The older cop cut in before I could answer. You put up a sign without authorization. I tilted my head at him. Authorization? It's my land. He stepped 1 foot onto my porch like he owned the place. Listen, buddy. Buddy. Always a bad start. The trail behind your house has been used for over 2 decades. You can't just shut it down because you feel like it. That's how community access works. Community access doesn't override private property, I said slowly. Not unless there's a recorded easement, which there isn't. The younger cop shifted his weight, like he agreed but wasn't allowed to. The older one crossed his arms. We're not here for a property law seminar. Good, I said. Because I don't give those for free. That one hit him. I could see it in the way his jaw twitched. He stepped closer, lowering his voice like he wanted to make sure the threat landed where it needed to. Hear me real clear, Hunt. If we get one more call saying you've been harassing residents, I raised an eyebrow. By telling them not to throw beer cans into the woods, he ignored me. We can and will detain you for a 24-hour disorderly conduct hold. No charges needed, no questions asked. He paused, let it sink in. That's when the dirty hit me, not the literal kind, the political kind. I looked him dead in the eyes. Let me ask you something, officer. Are you in your right mind? The younger cop stiffened like I'd crossed some invisible line, but the older one, he smiled, a slow, ugly smile that told me he'd been waiting for me to slip. Careful, he said. Words like that can be interpreted as obstruction. Obstruction, for asking if he was in his right mind. I felt the anger rise, not hot, but heavy, the kind that sinks into your gut and stays there. I kept my voice steady. So, let me get this straight. A woman who doesn't own an inch of my property calls you, and that gives you the right to come onto my land and tell me to open it for her? The younger cop finally spoke up, quiet, apologetic. Sir, we're just here to advise cooperation until this is sorted out. The old one cut him off with a glance sharp enough to slice plywood. Take the sign down by tomorrow morning, he said, or we escalate. Escalate. A lovely word people use when they don't want to say the truth. We're going to make your life hell. I leaned back against my porch column and folded my arms. You boys got badge numbers? That got their attention. The older cop stiffened. Why? Because you're giving me an unlawful order, I said calmly, and I'd like to report you properly. For half a second, the younger cop looked like he wanted to melt into the pavement. The older one took a step back, not much, but enough to show he wasn't expecting pushback. I didn't yell, I didn't threaten. I just stared at them, with the tired, steady patience of a man who'd been pushed 1 inch too far. Now, unless you boys brought a warrant or a court order, you're trespassing more than anyone you're here to complain about. They didn't arrest me, didn't even try. They walked back to their cruiser, the older one muttering something under his breath, the younger one refusing to make eye contact. And as they drove off, kicking up dust down my driveway, one thing became painfully clear. This wasn't a misunderstanding anymore. This was pressure, quiet, dirty pressure, and I just called it out loud. After the cops rolled out of my driveway, the dust hung in the air longer than they deserved. I stood there for maybe a full minute, hands on my hips, breathing slow so I didn't say anything stupid out loud. A long time ago, when I was younger, hotter-headed, and a little too quick to swing instead of talk, something like that visit would have ended badly. But age teaches you timing and patience. And right then, standing on my own porch after being threatened with a 24-hour hold for harassing people trespassing on my land, I knew exactly what I needed. Not anger, evidence. So I walked inside, grabbed my phone, and called the one person I knew would answer even if he was in the middle of Sunday church service. Tom Peterson, my friend, my lawyer, and, more importantly, a man who hated HOA bullies the way cats hate vacuum cleaners. He answered on the second ring. You in trouble again? Not yet, I said, but I think trouble's warming up the truck. I told him everything. The teens, the trash, the letter, the cops, the old officer's threat. Every detail. Tom didn't interrupt. He just let out low, thoughtful grunts every so often. The kind you only hear from someone who's already connecting dots before you finish the sentence. When I was done, he exhaled slowly. All right, Ron. First thing tomorrow morning, get cameras. Cameras? I asked. Good ones, he said. You want eyes on every inch of that land. The kind that records, stores, timestamps, and syncs to the cloud. Don't cheap out. HOA people like Karen don't stop unless a judge tells them to. I rubbed my forehead. You think this is going to court? I think, he said carefully, that they're counting on you not having proof when they do something stupid. That sentence chilled me more than Karen's threats or the cop's tone, because Tom wasn't dramatic. He wasn't a man to exaggerate. If he felt something coming, something was coming. Put up cameras, he repeated. Don't talk to Karen. Don't talk to those officers. Don't talk to anybody. Let them make mistakes. Let the cameras catch it. I nodded, even though he couldn't see it. All right, Tom. Cameras it is. We hung up, and I sat at the kitchen table for a long moment. The house was quiet. Too quiet. And that always makes a man think. I didn't want a war. Didn't want drama. Didn't want this HOA circus spilling onto my land. But if they insisted on starting one, I sure as hell wasn't entering it blind. The next morning, I drove into town and walked into the electronics aisle at the big box store. A kid barely old enough to shave bounced over with that eager retail smile. Looking for anything in particular, sir? Yeah, I said. I want cameras, good ones, the kind you'd use if you thought someone was about to mess with your life. He blinked twice, didn't ask a single follow-up question. Smart kid. We walked out with 4 top-of-the-line outdoor cameras, motion detection, night vision sharp enough to read a license plate at 2 a.m., cloud backup, and enough wiring to rig Fort Knox. Cost me more than a few cases of beer, but peace of mind never goes on sale. I spent the entire afternoon installing them. One on the trail, one facing the front gate, one by the porch, one angled down the path leading toward the lake. Screws in, cables tucked, Wi-Fi synced, phone connected. By sundown, my land lit up on my screen like a nighttime map. Every corner covered, every movement tracked. I cracked open a beer and tested the feed. Crystal clear. Even the wind blowing through the leaves looked like something out of a nature documentary. I leaned back, feeling something I hadn't felt since this whole mess started. Prepared. Let Karen try something. Let her security goons try something. Let those cops come back with their chests puffed out again. This time, they wouldn't just be wrong. They'd be wrong on camera. And that's the thing about people who abuse authority. They can yell at you, they can talk down to you, they can push their luck, but they can't argue with a time-stamped recording in front of a judge. So I sat on my porch, watching the live camera feed on my phone, the land glowing in cool night vision green. And I whispered to myself, all right, HOA, make your move. They didn't disappoint. It took less than 24 hours. The next morning started like any other. Coffee, quiet, the soft rustle of wind through the oaks behind my property. And then, just after 9 a.m., my phone buzzed. Not a text, not a call, a motion alert, backtrail camera. I tapped the screen, and the moment the video opened, the blood in my veins went cold. 2 men, walking straight down my trail like they were on a Sunday jog. Khaki pants, matching polo shirts with a little Lakeview Estates HOA logo stitched on the chest. One of them carried a walkie-talkie on his belt. The other carried a crowbar, not even trying to hide it. They marched right up to my new sign, the one I'd poured concrete around, and stood there like they were deciding how to dismantle a small building. The guy with the crowbar looked around once, then smirked. Then he jammed the metal tip under the signpost. My jaw tightened. He leaned his full weight onto it, grunting, and started working the post back and forth. The other guy kept watch, arms crossed, like he was guarding a military operation. And here's the thing. My cameras weren't just high resolution. They had audio. Clear, crisp audio. So when the man with the crowbar started talking, I heard every word. Crowbar guy. Karen said just break the damn thing. She's sick of looking at it. My eyebrows shot up. There it was, the line every lawyer dreams of. Lookout guy. Yeah, well, this guy's gonna lose his mind when he sees it gone. The crowbar scraped against concrete. Crowbar guy. He ain't gonna do nothing. Karen runs the HOA. We run the trail. He laughed. A cocky, ugly laugh. Lookout guy. Man, he probably thinks that concrete's gonna stop us. Another grunt. Another jerk of the crowbar. Then, with one last heave, the post snapped loose. They dragged the sign out of the hole and let it fall to the dirt like it was a trophy they didn't respect. The first guy spat on it. Crowbar guy. She'll be happy we got it done before lunch. The audio didn't just catch their words. It caught the pride in their voices, the arrogance, the stupidity, and the part that hit me hardest. They truly believed they were untouchable. I watched the whole thing live, from my porch, hands clenched so tight my knuckles turned white. My first instinct? Grab the truck keys, hunt them down, explain the meaning of private property, the way I learned it growing up. Direct, simple, and involving a firm grip. But then I heard Tom's voice in my head, steady as ever. Don't interfere. Let them make mistakes. Let the camera do the work. So I didn't move. I let them walk off with the crowbar, my sign, and their own stupidity. Then I saved the footage, backed it up twice, uploaded it to the cloud, and emailed a copy to Tom with 2 words. It happened. He called me 30 seconds later. Ron, this is perfect. They tore down the sign, I said. Better than that, he replied. They narrated the crime for us. He wasn't wrong. Time-stamped, clear video, clear audio, clear admission that Karen ordered it. Tom told me exactly what to do next. File today, don't wait. Property destruction, trespass, intimidation, and attach every second of that video. So I drove to the county courthouse, printed out the complaint, uploaded the footage to the clerk's system, and handed everything over like I was dropping a live grenade in the middle of bureaucracy. The clerk skimmed the form, then looked up at me with wide eyes. They did this while knowing they were being recorded? They're HOA, I said. They think cameras are for other people. She shook her head. Well, the judge is not going to like this. Good. I didn't need him to like me, just the truth. I walked out of the courthouse with a stamped copy in hand and a weight off my shoulders. That evening, I sat on the porch again, watching the trail through my phone's live feed. Nothing moved, just wind and shadows. But something had changed. This wasn't just frustration anymore. This was a case, a real one. And Karen? Well, Karen didn't know it yet, but she had just dug her own hole with a crowbar. And tomorrow she'd come knocking again. But this time, she wouldn't be alone. She'd bring the same 2 cops, and she'd bring hell with her. They didn't wait long to make their next move. The very next day, just after lunch, I was sitting at my kitchen table going through some old paperwork when my phone buzzed again. This time, not from the cameras. It was a text from Tom. County logged your complaint. Judge's clerk flagged the video. Good start. Stay calm. I smiled a little at that last part. Stay calm, he said, like I was about to run outside swinging a shovel. I slipped the phone into my pocket, walked over to the sink to rinse my coffee mug, and that's when I heard it. Gravel. Slow, heavy, crunching, like yesterday's déjà vu. I dried my hands, moved to the front window, and peeked through the blinds. Same county cruiser, same dull paint, same sinking feeling in my gut. And this time, it wasn't just the 2 cops. Karen was with them. She stepped out of her SUV like she was making an entrance on a stage she thought she owned. Ponytail tight, sunglasses on, clipboard in hand. For dramatic effect, I guess. I watched them walk up my driveway together, Karen a half pace ahead, the older cop right behind her, the younger one trailing, looking like he wanted to be anywhere else. I took a breath, pulled out my phone, tapped my camera app, and started recording. If they were going to do something stupid, it was going to live in 4K. By the time they made it to my porch, I was already outside, leaning against one of the posts, phone in hand at my side where the camera could still see them. The young cop was the first to talk. Mr. Hunt. Officer, I answered, calm as a Sunday morning. Back again so soon? The older one scowled. We're here to resolve an escalating situation. Karen didn't wait for them to finish. She stepped forward like she was their commanding officer. This man is unlawfully blocking community access and intimidating residents, she said briskly. We informed you yesterday. He's refused to comply. I raised an eyebrow. Funny, I said. All I remember from yesterday is being threatened with a 24-hour hold for standing on my own porch. The old cop's jaw tightened. Mr. Hunt, we're not going over this again. Good, I said. Let's go over something new. I lifted my phone slightly so it was visible. Before we continue, I need both your names and badge numbers. You're giving me an order on my land, and if that order is unlawful, I'll need to report you properly. That sentence changed the air. The younger cop looked at the older one, quick, nervous glance. The older cop's eyes narrowed. Why are you recording us? Because the last time you were here, I said, you threatened to detain me for harassing people who were trespassing and littering. That sounded a whole lot like an unlawful use of authority. So, now I'm documenting. I pointed at my phone. For your sake and mine. He hesitated, just for a second. The younger cop cleared his throat. Officer Myers, badge 614. I nodded slowly. Thank you, Officer Myers. I turned my eyes to the older one. And you? He stared at me like he wanted to burn a hole through my skull. Sergeant Dugan, badge 1732. I repeated it out loud, clearly, so the audio would catch it. Sergeant Dugan, badge 1732, appreciate your cooperation. Karen scoffed. This is ridiculous. You're wasting their time and ours. Take the sign down, and this whole thing ends. I looked past her, toward the tree line where my sign used to stand, now just an empty space, still ringed with disturbed dirt and chipped concrete. You mean the sign your HOA security tore out with a crowbar yesterday? I asked. Her mouth opened, then shut. The younger cop blinked. You have proof of that? I almost smiled. You tell me, I said, holding up my phone. 4 cameras, full coverage, clear video, clear audio. Your HOA guys bragging about Karen told us to break the damn thing. For the first time, Karen's confidence cracked. Just a hairline fracture, but I saw it. That's taken out of context. I laughed once. That's the nice thing about video, ma'am. There isn't much context to twist when someone's on camera with a crowbar saying your name like you're signing their paycheck. Sergeant Dugan stepped in, trying to salvage whatever control he thought he still had. Mr. Hunt, regardless of what you think you have recorded, we're here with a simple directive. Stop blocking access to the trail until this matter is sorted out. That's it. I tilted my head. So, let me make sure I've got this on record, I said. You're ordering me, verbally, to surrender control of land I legally own, without a court order, without an easement on file, and without any documentation, all because an HOA president told you it's community access. Is that accurate, Sergeant? His lips pressed into a thin, angry line. You're twisting it. No, I said quietly. I'm clarifying it. The younger cop shifted again, pushing his hat back a bit, eyes flicking to my phone like it was a loaded gun. Karen stepped closer, voice rising. You can play word games all you want, but this trail belongs to us. You're just some bitter old man who bought land next to the wrong neighborhood, and you're about to learn how that works. I turned to the camera, never taking my eyes off her. Note for the record, I said calmly, the HOA president is openly attempting to direct law enforcement actions on private property without legal authority. That landed hard. Neither officer liked that sentence. Sergeant Dugan uncrossed his arms, his tone sharpening. All right, we're done here. You've been advised. If you continue to cause problems, this goes up the chain. Good, I said. Send it up. Because my next call goes to the sheriff's office, and my lawyer already has your names, your badge numbers, and a copy of that footage. The younger cop looked like he wanted to crawl into the cruiser and disappear. Karen tried one last time, voice hissing low so only we could hear. You think you've won something here? I shook my head. No, I said quietly. I think I just stopped losing. They left without shaking hands, without another word. Gravel crunched under tires as the cruiser pulled away, Karen's SUV following like a shadow that wasn't ready to let go. I stood there on the porch for a long moment after they were gone. The air was still, too still, and for the first time since this started, I didn't feel like the one being cornered. I felt like a man who just turned a light on in a dark room, and somewhere, behind all that HOA paperwork and community access talk, I knew someone else had seen that same light. They were gone. Karen, the 2 officers. Their dust was still floating in the sunlight when my phone buzzed in my pocket. At first I thought it was Tom following up, or maybe the camera system pinging again. But no, it was an email. No sender name, just an address I didn't recognize. I almost deleted it. Spam maybe, but the subject line stopped my thumb cold. You're not crazy. She forged everything. I opened it. And right there, in the first sentence, the whole battlefield shifted under my feet. I saw what happened at your place today. Karen is losing control. She told the board you threatened her sons and attacked police. Everyone here knows that's a lie. I blinked, reading it twice just to make sure I wasn't imagining things. A whistleblower from inside the HOA. The email continued. I'm part of the compliance team. I shouldn't be emailing you, but I'm done with this. Karen has been forging documents for years. She forged the access easement she's been waving around. She forged the old owner's signature. And last month, she forged the date stamp on the trail map to make it look historic. She's dangerous. My breath stilled in my chest. There it was. The answer to everything. The HOA letter, the cops, the confidence, the arrogance. Karen wasn't bluffing. She'd built her entire leverage on fake paperwork. But the next paragraph, that one hit even harder. She flipped out after you filmed her with the officers today. I overheard her say she was done being nice and would teach you a lesson. I'm not sticking around for whatever she has planned next. Attached are the files she doesn't want anyone seeing. I scrolled down. 5 attachments. 1. A PDF labeled Trail Easement 98, stamp crooked, signature pixelated, metadata, created last month. 2. A scanned page, Community Access Charter PG 7. Only problem? The HOA was incorporated in 2008. 3. A photo of Karen's desk, showing 3 drafts of the same forged signature. 4. An email thread titled, Let's Push Him Off the Trail Issue, with her ordering board members to just agree with the story. 5. A final audio snippet, just 6 seconds long. Karen's voice unmistakably hers. I don't care what the law says. That land is ours now. We'll make him comply. Cold, sharp, certain. I let the phone fall into my lap, and for a long, still moment, I just stared out the window. Not angry, not even surprised. Just tired. But the good kind of tired. The kind that comes when the truth finally shows its face. I forwarded everything to Tom. No commentary, no explanation. 5 minutes later, my phone rang. He didn't say hello. Ron, we're done. Done? Done, he repeated. She forged an easement. She falsified property records. She directed law enforcement interference. She ordered property destruction. And thanks to your cameras, we can tie every action back to her personally. I leaned back in my chair. So, what happens now? Tom took a breath, the deep, satisfied kind a man only makes when a legal victory is already signed in his mind. I file an injunction. I file a criminal referral. Then I file a civil suit big enough to buy you a brand new truck. I couldn't help but smile. Think it'll stick? He laughed. Actually laughed out loud. Ron, judges don't ignore forged signatures, especially 3 versions of the same one. This is over. I hung up and stepped onto my porch. The air felt different, lighter, like the land itself could finally breathe. For weeks, maybe months, I'd been pushed, poked, lied to, threatened, and treated like I was some old fool who'd roll over the second someone flashed a badge or a clipboard. But today the ground beneath my boots felt solid again. Not because the fight was over, the legal part was still ahead, but because the truth had finally joined my side. And truth, once it shows up, it doesn't leave. That night, I walked down to the trail with a flashlight. The empty spot where my sign had been was still there, the dirt still disturbed, the broken concrete still scattered. I leaned down, picked up a chunk of that concrete, and turned it over in my hand. Ugly little reminder of what they'd tried to do. I set it back down gently and whispered, "It's my land," and it always was. Then I turned, walked back toward the house, and locked the door behind me, not out of fear, but out of habit. Because deep down, I knew one thing for certain. Tomorrow, Karen would wake up thinking she still held power, but I'd already taken it from her, with a camera, a whistleblower, and the truth she couldn't outrun. And that was the real ending.